This episode of UK Low Carb Podcast is sponsored by Deliciously Guilt-Free. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the latest Tuesday series. For the next few weeks, I'm joined by Katie Caldesi. Now, Katie is a low-carb chef and with her husband, Giancarlo, owns a Caldesi restaurant in Marylebone in London and also in Bray, Berkshire. She also teaches low-carb cooking and is a published author, including the most recent publication, the 30-Minute Diabetes Cookbook. She also appears regularly in the national press. Each week, Katie will teach me a low-carb recipe, so stay tuned so that you can add that bit of Caldesi magic to your own low-carb creations. I'll now hand over to Katie to see what's cooking today. So, everybody, welcome back to another Tuesday episode. I hope you've enjoyed what we've been doing so far. I know the series with Graham Phillips was really successful and popular. And now I'm going to talk to one of my other low-carb friends about doing something a bit different. Now, I appreciate I talk about doing things a bit different every episode. So, how much more difference is there in the world? But this is going to be different because I'm with my good friend Katie Caldesi, and she's going to be doing some cooking lessons for me on some kind of low-carb foods that she thinks be really useful for people to know about, and this all comes from her book. So I just want to say a big thank you to you, Katie, and welcome to UK Low Carb.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here.
That's great. Well, I just want to say this all comes from your 30-minute diabetes cookbook, which I know I've been working my way through. Absolutely love the cookbook. There it is. You can get your own copy. Now, where's that on Amazon? It's on all good bookshops.
Yes, it's on Amazon. It's on our site, lowcarbtogether.com, which will click you through to Amazon. And I think it's down to £6 a book now. So it's very good value for money. And it's all about, the important bit is the 30 minutes. So they're very quick recipes and they're all low carb and they're all gluten free.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Now, for those people who don't know Katie, and if you don't, I think you've been under a rock somewhere, she is quite more often seen in the national press. They feature her quite a few times here in the UK. I know we get listeners all around the world, but she does appear quite often in the national press in this country because her and her husband, Giancarlo, are an inspiration in terms of the food revolution of low carb and how to inspire the people. They're in 2 restaurants. She's written 15 cookbooks. So when it came to making a cooking program, she was the obvious choice of person to go to. So I really appreciate this, Katie. And the biggest regret I have, I think, in asking you to do this is that we're about 100 miles away. So all this lovely food which you're making, you have to describe to me how delicious it is. And then you're going to have to enjoy it. And I'm just have to kind of, look at the screen and kind of feel a bit upset I can't try it myself. But apart from that, let's crack on with our first episode. And I think today is brown bread. So this is low carb brown bread, recipe you've got to share with us.
Yeah, that's right. I love bread and realised it did account for rather a few too many pounds around my middle. So I had to give up bread when Giancarlo and I went low carb. But then I thought it's such a useful thing to have around. I can see why we all resort to sandwiches and toast because it's just so quick, isn't it? So now I make this bread recipe and these bread rolls last about 5 days in the fridge. They freeze really well. You can do all sorts of shapes and sizes with them. So it's just a really useful, versatile recipe and it's all low carb bread. So without further ado, I shall tell you what's in here. We've got some ground flaxseed or linseed. So this is what it looks like here in its whole form. And I buy it from Tesco's or any supermarkets, but I choose the golden linseed or flaxseed because I prefer the colour of it on bread. But if you find that you've only got this dark linseed, that also works equally well, and it produces a bread that looks a bit more like rye bread.
Okay.
But the taste is exactly the same. So I just go for the golden because I like the look of it, but no other reason. And I mill it myself at home. So I've got a NutriBullet, and I pop it in the NutriBullet, a quick whiz, and then it grinds it up for me. So you've got milled flaxseed or linseed, whatever you want to call it. And it's much cheaper to buy it that way rather than the ready ground one.
So check then, for those who are listening rather than seeing, so how fine are we talking? Is it more like sort of just a powder like flour would be if you bought a bag of flour?
No, it's not as fine as that. It's a bit more granular. imagine if you ground up walnuts, and it's not as gritty as that, but it's not as fine as the ground almonds either. So it's got a bit of texture to it, which I quite like. You could probably go on milling it till you, and it's a bit like I used to love wholemeal bread. So this is a bit like, it looks and feels a bit like wholemeal bread.
Perfect.
I've got some psyllium husks in here, and I choose to have the psyllium husks rather than the psyllium husk powder. The psyllium husk powder is a lot more expensive and can turn your bread purple, which doesn't matter again about the flavour. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know. It happened to me a lot at the beginning, and it happens to other people that write to me frequently saying, "Why is my bread purple?" So if you look for blonde psyllium husks, you're getting all that fibre in there as well. So it's a very good source of fibre for you. And it helps the bread rise and makes it sort of spongy and more bread-like, really. Then I've got ground almonds here, which is called almond flour in America. I've got some coconut flour, which doesn't make the bread taste of coconuts at all. It just lends a slightly sweet flavour to the dough. I've got some salt and baking powder. So these are my
That's pretty straightforward then, isn't it?
ingredients.
Very, very sort of simple set of ingredients there. That's good to know. I was going to say, there's some sort of low-carb loaves that I've seen in the past, and they get very complicated, and you sort of think, you're starting to lose the sort of low-carb element if you're starting to add other things in there which aren't so good for us. So,
yes,
very simple
exactly.
ingredients. Yeah.
So it is. I mean, the only sort of processed ingredient, I suppose, is baking powder, but that's all, and it's not very much of it either. So I've mixed my dried ingredients together first, and now I'm going to... It's a very tough shell. I'm going to crack my eggs into here.
So how many eggs are we going for? And
we're going for 3, and it doesn't matter the size of them, really. You might, if your eggs are very extra large, you might find that you have a wet dough. But other than that,
so let's just check then. What are we talking in terms of how much of the powders do we have? What sort of weights are we talking about?
I've got 130 grams of ground almonds.
Okay.
I've got 30 grams of coconut flour, 20 grams of coarse psyllium husks. I've got 60 grams of ground golden flaxseed, 1 heaped teaspoon of salt, 3 medium eggs, and then I'm going to add 250 millilitres of water into this. So here's the water, and it doesn't have to be hot or cold or just water, tap water. So there were recipes at the beginning when people were low-carb baking and it had to be boiling water, but actually I just use cold water and it's absolutely fine. Now, you can do this in a food processor, but there's not really any reason to, because all you have to do is stir it together.
This looks remarkably simple. It's incredible. I've actually made low-carb bread before where I use gluten. This is at home. I don't do it, obviously, deliciously guilt-free with gluten-free, but I tried it at home with gluten. And, of course, you've got the whole process of kneading and rising with the yeast and all the rest of it. And it was a long... But this seems remarkably straightforward.
It is. And it looked quite wet at first, but what's happening is the coconut flour and the flaxseed is absorbing that water.
Right, because coconut in particular, it does soak up quite a lot of fluid, doesn't it, coconut?
It's very absorbent, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you think you've got a very wet dough, just give it a couple of minutes and it will probably sort itself out. And if you find it's very wet, say your eggs were huge, then just add a little bit more coconut flour in, or a bit more ground almonds or flaxseed, any of the dry ingredients, just to get it to the consistency you want. But this is about right. So for people listening rather than watching, it drops off the spoon, but it's not like a cake batter. It's not liquid at all.
Yeah.
In fact, it's not dropping off the spoon so easily now. So it has thickened before my very eyes.
Brilliant. Okay.
And so
now this wouldn't be
going
Italian
to,
cooking without the next bit, would it? So,
I know.
So this is olive oil. Brilliant.
And I'm just going to grease the baking tray with some olive oil. And I use my hand to do that so that I can oil my hands slightly as well.
Right.
And this means that my dough won't stick to me. I can also use my hand to just oil my work surface a little bit.
Right.
So the dough won't stick to me, it won't stick to my hands, it won't stick to the work surface, and it won't stick to the baking sheet that I'm going to use. So I put the dough onto the work surface, and I don't need to knead it at all because it's all homogeneous, it's all mixed up. But I'm just going to pat it into a round shape.
Right.
And I'm going to use a dinner knife just to divide it into 6. So I'm going to make 6. I've called them baps, and baps are a sort of flat roll, but apparently the word doesn't.
I was going to say that doesn't necessarily translate in different parts of the country, even, does it? So,
No,
they've
I
called
know.
different things in different parts of the UK. And I'm sure in America and Canada and Australia and in New Zealand, it's something else
Baps
again, isn't it?
Might mean something else. It might even mean something that I don't mean at all, but a part of one's anatomy or something.
Moving on.
Moving on. What I mean is a flattened roll like this, which I've made a little patty. It looks a bit like a fat beef burger, I would say, and it's slightly flattened. And the reason for flattening it is so that it cooks quite quickly. Because the book was all about 30-minute cooking, it's taken me, about 5 minutes to make the mixture. So in order to make it cook quickly, I flatten down the rolls, or the baps in my case.
What I find incredible is just how doughy looking that is. So when you started mixing it, it looked very liquidy, like a cake batter, and then suddenly, very quickly, it became fairly solid and stable. And now you're putting into these balls, and I'm kind of surprised it's not just like a gluten-based, flour-based. It looks just the same to me.
And I'm also going to actually join these two up together. It does. It looks like wholemeal bread. But, so I've just joined 2 of the rolls together and rolled them into a long fat sausage, so that you can see that if you wanted to, you could do a sort of baguette shape.
I've just thought of something as well. I'm going to make this tonight, by the way. I've decided. We've got some Cillian husk, thank goodness. And I just thought there's something that I've been missing like mad, and I've not had it for about 2 years now, and that's garlic bread. And when you made that when you made that baguette, that would be beautiful, wouldn't it? Now, just tell me, would I have to bake it first, I guess, and then you put the garlic on afterwards to kind of finish it off? Do you kind of part bake it?
I would bake it first, and then slice it, and then make your garlic butter up, and then I would put the garlic butter between each slice, and then wrap it in foil and put it back in the oven.
Perfect.
So that the garlic butter melts through. And I've just got some seeds here. So over 2 of my rolls, my baps, I'm just flattening that one down a bit. And why I'm flattening them down is the cooking time, but also so that they all have the same cooking time. So even my one that looks a bit like a baguette is about 2 centimetres in thickness.
Right.
So just under an inch in thickness. So that means they'll all cook at the same time.
Actually, this is a real problem that I have sometimes. I'm a little bit slapdash, I think is the polite version. My wife would say something a bit different, but I'm a bit slapdash, and I think I tend to just whack stuff together a little bit. But of course, when you're trying to bake something like this, it has to be consistent. Otherwise, some will burn, some will be raw.
Exactly, and your cooking time is different. So there's no need for any glaze or egg wash or anything like that over here. I'm just going to put a little bit of, I've got some Maldon salt. If I had some rosemary in front of me, I would have added a bit of rosemary, but
well, in the magic world of podcasting, she's got some rosemary in front of her.
Oh,
wow.
Yes, that's right. I just put some rosemary on it. In fact, I substituted it for a bit of dried oregano, but you get the gist of it anyway.
YouTube people, just don't give it away, okay?
No, just don't say a thing.
Excellent.
So I'm just about to put my flattened rolls, my baps and my baguette into the oven, which is on 200 degrees fan, and that's Celsius, and 220 if you don't have a fan. And if you're in Fahrenheit, it's 425 or gas mark 7. And I'm going to put them in for about 20 minutes.
Wonderful. That's great. So they'll be there for 20 minutes. And just tell me, this is a key thing with all bread, Katie, is that the bread smell drifts and wafts around the house, and it's that enticing smell that makes you just want to have the bread so badly.
Yes.
What does this smell like, in all honesty? Is it similar to bread, or is it very different?
It's similar. And it's it's not exactly the same as wheat. I've spent years now trying to develop bread recipes that are similar to how wheat smells. And I've sort of even held a piece of bread to my nose and thought, what is it that we all love about this? And that's why I put the coconut flour in, because I think wheat is actually quite sweet. And when you eat a piece of toast or you eat a piece of normal wheat bread, you're actually eating something that's a little bit naturally sweet, even if no one's put any sugar in it. So, and what else do I think? I think that there's a caramelization that you get with wheat flour that you perhaps don't get with low carb bread. So that sort of crusty, dark brown is not quite the same. You wouldn't have eggs in normal bread necessarily, apart from something like a brioche. Here you've got eggs in it. So although it toasts, I under toast it rather than over toast it. Right. Because the eggs don't have such a great toasting ability that wheat does. So I have to be really honest, it's not exactly like wheat bread, but it's really tasty, really nice. And it's a great vessel. It's a great carrier, like any bread is, and it won't raise your glucose as much as wheat bread. So if that's what you're about, that's what we're about. Is that
I'll tell you what, let's just fast forward now 20 minutes and let's see when this loaf now comes out of the oven. So welcome back. The 20 minutes has passed. The magic of recording technology that we can actually skip those 20 minutes for you. And Katie, have you got that lovely bread smell? That means it must be ready.
I have, and they look done to me. They're a beautiful golden brown colour.
Superb. Let's have a look then.
And it smells nutty to me, and nutty, hot, gorgeous smell. So I'm holding them up here so that you can see. And they have gone a sort of golden brown colour. And
that looks just like normal, any like bread you'd find. It's risen really well as well, actually, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. Yeah. And done within 30 minutes. So 10 minutes to make the dough and about 20 minutes cooking time. So I'm just using a spatula to clear them from the bottom of the dish. And I'm going to just put them onto a cooling rack. So
they look amazing. Oh, you know what? I can just imagine now you cutting them open and then melting just butter.
Some butter on it. Shall I just do that just to make you really...
don't. Just don't do it, okay? Let's move on.
And I've got my sort of baguette, half focaccia style. So in the book, I've called them focaccia sticks, because they're sort of based on an Italian focaccia. They look a bit like a flattened baguette. And actually, it is better to wait till they go a little bit cooler to room temperature and they set firmer. And then I can slice that baguette into little thin slices and make it into garlic bread if I want to. Or serve it with cheese. Serve it with butter. And the baps are big enough. You could do some bacon and make that into a bacon butty. Bacon butty. So
okay, so we're not missing out on bread anymore. I love that. I just want to check, how do you store them in the fridge? And how long do they last for?
They last about 5 days in the fridge. Okay. They can freeze for 3 months, and I keep them in a reusable plastic bag in the fridge, and I just take them out. And I cut them in half with a serrated bread knife, and then I just toast them so they're not fridge cold. They're either warm or very lightly toasted. Perfect. But they'll really do for everything that you would have bread. So they'll make a sandwich. They'll make you just have half of one cut horizontally and have it with scrambled eggs. Any of those things. Have it with pate.
There you go.
Toast and Marmite. That's another way. If you're a Marmite lover.
Yeah, again, for those outside the UK, maybe not so aware, it's a product that everyone either loves or hates. I love personally. Marmite and butter is a lovely combination on bread.
So I can just cut one open just to show you what they're like on the inside. So there we are. There's the bread.
Wow, look at that.
And I'm just going to have a little bit of butter. They are steaming a bit. So I've been a little bit premature here, a little bit greedy.
Yeah, I should have butter's going to melt perfectly, isn't it? I mean, I would do the same if I was there right now.
Look at that.
Okay.
So the butter's melting into the bread, good. And I am going to have to taste it just to make sure it's okay.
Oh, I've just realised as well, at Easter, you put some spices in there and a little bit of sweetener maybe and make it into a hot cross bun, couldn't you? Right, good. I'm so happy for you. I'm so pleased that you get to eat that lovely bread.
With melting butter.
I might go and have some stale water.
Okay.
I'm very envious. That looks amazing. Thank you so much, Katie, for that recipe. Thank you for coming on UK Low Carb today. And will you join me next week when we'll go through another recipe?
I will indeed. I shall look forward to it. Thank you.
What is next week's recipe, just to give us a little heads up so that people can come back for more?
I'm going to do shopski cheese, which is an unusual dish from Bulgaria. And everything cooks in a pot all in one go. And it's very easy and it makes a perfect brunch or a lunch.
Fantastic. Sounds amazing. So look forward to that. Have a great week, everyone. And we'll see you next Tuesday. Bye for now.
Thank you.